Hello and welcome to the Anglo-Italian podcast for this Euros 2024 review, and we'll be doing it on my beloved Poland. And here to help me give some optimism ahead of this tournament, we've got a great friend of the show, but also someone who is an expert in Polish football, and we've got Ryan Hubbard. So Ryan, delighted to have you on this podcast, and more importantly, this video as well as we go on YouTube. How are you doing? And more importantly, how are you feeling about the Euros?
A little bit of excitement. Not getting myself too hyped up at this point. Poland drawn in a very, very tough group.
Yes.
And well, given the way they qualified, it's the least you could expect, really, that they were going to have to play some tough games. So, yeah, I think this one, it's a case of Poland have qualified. So let's take that as a positive, and anything else is a bonus at this point.
That was certainly the first step, that's for sure, when I was looking at the result in Wales. But more importantly, obviously, we've got to kind of explain to those that aren't kind of maybe au fait with Poland and how they're shaping up for these Euros. Let's start off by talking about the man in charge. Now, we did speak or just briefly talk about Michał Probierz, but there's kind of a little bit of context that we have to take our listeners and those viewing about the context of how we got to Michał Probierz, because it was combinations of decisions that got us to this position, because originally we had Fernando Santos leading Poland into the qualification process. And it didn't go too well for Fernando Santos during that qualification campaign. A lot of kind of noise in the background about his management of the whole situation. But if we start off by talking about Probierz, I mean, what's your impression so far of him?
I mean, so far there's nothing to complain about, really. Poland have certainly improved over I think it's about 6 games that he's led. It couldn't have got much worse. let's be brutally honest.
Exactly. Yeah.
He's Michał Probierz. If you don't know him, he's not. I wouldn't say he's eccentric as such, but he's very outspoken. He's very set in his style. And it's pretty much what we've expected so far. He started to implement his style on the team and change what Fernando Santos had tried to do, which is a good thing. And as I said, the results have certainly so far been relatively positive. So Poland is certainly in a lot better place than they were perhaps 7 or 8 months ago. So there are a lot of positives in that sense.
Yeah, and I find his style of football quite refreshing as well from a Polish national perspective, because he is kind of seen as a progressive within the Polish national football circles. He was part of the under-21 setup prior to the step up to the role. And he's been kind of compared as the Polish Pep to an extent as well. But do you think that kind of narrative fits him?
I think more for his bald head than any other reason. I don't think it's necessarily style of football. Yeah, as you said, he was the under-21s manager before. He's had a lot of experience managing in Poland, so he knows the system. He knows what he wants from the national team. And one good thing, I suppose, is we have to sort of look at it under the narrative that this Poland team is a team in transition now. We are getting to the end of its, I suppose, latest golden generation. We've already seen the likes of Kamil Glik and Grzegorz Krychowiak who have departed the national team. So of that sort of team who was led by Adam Nawałka, who got to the quarterfinals of the Euros back in 2016, we've only really got Wojciech Szczęsny and Robert Lewandowski left over. So they are, I think Lewandowski's 35, 36 now. Szczęsny's in his early 30s as well, I think. So they're on their way towards the end of their national careers. There's a quite a big belief that this might even be their last international tournament. So I think Probierz he's got a task on his hand in performing well at the Euros. But I don't think his job, like some previous managers perhaps, is necessarily on the line unless Poland get absolutely battered in the group and destroyed. I think he's been brought in, or it certainly feels like he's been brought in to manage that transition period away from the older guard, bring in some of those younger players perhaps that he dealt with in the under-21s, and perhaps fill the void that will be left by the likes of Szczęsny and Lewandowski when they eventually do decide to hang up their boots.
And what have you made of his kind of style of football? Because he's stuck with a kind of free at the back philosophy, and certainly at times you can see through transitions of the game, he likes to be a bit more expansive. You've seen Jakub Kiewel, for example, go a little bit more direct with his role down that left-hand side, for example. And he did a lot of that in his role previously with Spezia, for example. But I was kind of maybe more open to the idea that he seems to be much more progressive with the attacking style of football, which I feel in recent sort of managerial kind of reigns, for example, if we refer to Mikniewicz at Qatar in the World Cup, as well as to an extent Santos, we didn't necessarily see that kind of fluid style of football. Do you think Probesh has definitely given a bit more confidence to the players?
I think there's definitely a bit of confidence. I think there's a lot better atmosphere within the squad as well. And I think that certainly comes across in the way that the team are playing. You saw it. I know it's only against, I say it's only Estonia that they played in that playoff semi-final. But, 5 goals, it's the first time Poland scored 5 goals in a very long time. I can't even remember the last time it was. And one positive in a strange roundabout way is that Lewandowski wasn't one of those on the score sheet.
Yeah.
So the goals were coming from elsewhere in the past. And again, very much under the view that it is only Estonia that they were playing against, but the goals are coming from elsewhere. And that is not something that Poland have really necessarily had. They've had a big reliance on Lewandowski over the years. And when Lewandowski hasn't performed, Poland haven't performed. So it is good to see them finding goals from other places. But yeah, I think there are lots of positives in that respect for Poland.
Yeah, certainly. And I'm looking forward to what maybe he can do against the bigger sides. And there'll be very interesting kind of matchups against France and the Netherlands for sure. So let's move on and think about the squad itself, because, I think it's a fairly steady squad. There's no kind of surprises to an extent. But I think from those that maybe don't really follow Poland's national football, they will see some of those names and not recognize them necessarily, as you allude to, because there's going to be a sense of transition. We saw a little bit of that introduced with Probesh with his first few squads in the qualifiers, but certainly for this upcoming kind of tournament, he's kind of made it a bit more stable with the kind of workman-like midfielders, I would say, to an extent. But then you've got a few of the attacking flair players and those that he trusts as well. So as you allude to, those that he kind of feels will be able to do a job. Just from your point of view, who do you think are the players that maybe people should look out for when it comes to the Poland national squad?
Well, besides obviously those bigger names that are undoubtedly going to get mentioned, I think one of the key players is going to have to be Piotr Zielinski this tournament. I know he's one of the arguably bigger names and one that people might recognise as such, but it is his tournament to step into that, as I said, into that. Not necessarily the position that Lewandowski is going to vacate, but the role that he's going to vacate in terms of his leadership and his, the players looking up to him in that respect, because he will become one of the more senior players, and it will be a big one for him to show that he can fill that role, because he's going to be potentially leading the national team for the next 5 or 6 years. Away from that, we're going to have to probably look for some of the younger players. And one that seems to have so far stood out under Probiej is Nikola Zalewski, the Roma sort of left wing back, left winger. He's not been playing recently too much at Roma. And from reading today, a couple of reports that he's potentially on his way out. He has only got a year left of his contract at Roma. So this is going to be a big tournament for him as well, to put his name out there and to try and secure a big move to, arguably a bigger club than Roma. Whether that transpires or not, I'm not sure. But certainly the way that he's been playing under Probiej and the position that and the freedom he's been given under Probiej, it's certainly been. He's had some positive performances. He's chipped in with I think 3 or 4 assists since Probiej took charge as well, which is more than he really contributed before under Santos. So I think they're my two certain pickouts for the Poland squad.
I mean, the one that I'm definitely really excited about because of the form that he's displaying in the Champions League for Lens is Przemysław Frankowski. Obviously, he had a great kind of start to his Polish national campaign when he was brought under Paulo Sousa back in the 2020, I think it was 22 World Cup. I can't remember now. It's been a long time now, but his form has been formidable, and I think he's going to be quite important down those kind of right or left-hand sides, depending on how he decides to display him as well in the squad. The other one that is kind of maybe one for those that are unknown is Tara Romanchik, who obviously comes in from the Polish National League setup. Obviously, he's been a bit exiled from the Ukraine setup as well, because obviously he felt that he was more Polish than he was Ukrainian as well. How do you feel he's going to come into this squad? Because certainly he had a good appearance against Wales.
Romanchuk's one of these players, and I think you alluded to it about Probierz perhaps having his favourites. Romanchuk played under him at Jagiellonia, Białystok, and obviously they've just become Polish champions for the first time. So he comes on the back of a very good season, and it's that relationship with Probierz that could put him in contention with a position in the starting 11. To be honest, in that centre of midfield, I'd be looking towards Jakub Piotrowski, who plays for Ludogorets in Bulgaria. I think he's only played for, I think, 4 or 5 games for the Polish national team so far, so he's still relatively unknown, and he's not playing for a massive club, so he's quite unknown outside of Poland and outside of Eastern Europe. But he certainly had a couple of good, strong performances, chipped in with a couple of goals. I personally would like to see him start. I certainly think he's deserved it. Obviously, Poland have a couple of friendly matches against Ukraine and against Turkey in the next week or two. So certainly would be interesting to see who starts for them and where perhaps Probierz is thinking and what he's going to do.
Yeah, certainly. And thinking about the style of football, do you think the players that he's got at his disposal will fit the kind of system that he's looking to deploy? Because I know he likes to kind of change it up dependent on the opponent, but certainly it feels like he's got the players that will fit his style of football, right?
It certainly seemed that way so far. As I said, we've not had much to judge him on so far, and Poland haven't played really a stronger opponent. I suppose Wales would be the strongest opponent that Poland have played under Probierz. So we haven't really seen his style tested. But so far, as you can only go up against, you can only beat what's in front of you. So exactly. so far, he seems to have the players playing the way that he wants to play. We've not really had the need to see him play a plan B as such. So what he might do against the tougher opponent still remains to be seen. But certainly so far it looks like his dominoes are all in a row.
Right. Well, let's move you on to the period where you kind of give me a bit more optimism, Ryan. It's about where we're going to end up. Now, I'm feeling maybe group stage 1 is where we're going to end up at. We're not going to get past this group, but I mean, I'm optimistic. I think we can get at least 2 draws in this group stage. It's maybe a bit of an ask, but given that, we've got a really tight group, you've got some really superb teams in Netherlands as well as France, but also Austria. I think people are writing off Austria because of that Ralf Rangnick aspect, but he's got some fantastic results with that Austria squad, and you can see that's the kind of squad that's developing right now. So I don't think this is going to be an easy group, far from it, and I think it will be a hard game for the likes of France and Netherlands as well. But given the context of Probierz wants to, instill this confidence into the team, he wants to get that sense of pride back into the nation as well, give them something to cheer about. How do you think we're going to fare? Because it's going to be a tight ask, right?
It is. You look at the group, I think it's by far the toughest group in this tournament. Poland obviously not given much of a chance as being 4th seeds. If you look at pretty much every seed, if the first seed, you got the team that you wouldn't want to draw against. The second seed, probably the team you wouldn't want to draw against. The third seed, probably the team you wouldn't want to draw against. So on paper, you'd look at the Austria game as an important one, just purely for the fact that you would expect Poland and Austria to be perhaps battling for that 3rd place. But equally, you could see Austria finishing second in this group. So I suppose you know the famous thing in Poland that you've got the opening match, the match for everything, and then the match of honour, and it's pretty much the way it looks like it's going to fall. This one, so the second match for me is going to be the one where if Poland have any chance of qualifying, they need a result in that match against Austria. Needing a result against France is not the it's not going to be a good thing for Poland. But having been on podcasts and spoken to representatives from Austria and Netherlands particularly, they're not entirely confident around their squad, and perhaps they feel they could be battling for third place in this group. So there's a lot of scope for Poland to perhaps finish anywhere from second to fourth in this group. Like yourself, I'd probably lean towards fourth place as being most likely. But we talk about this is the 50th anniversary of the 1974 World Cup, which was played in Germany or in West Germany at the time, and Poland were totally unfancied in that and ended up finishing third. So that's the narrative is in Poland is all going to be around that. People are going to be, hopefully trying to compare this lot to the 1974 team. And who knows? They've surprised the odds once before in Germany, and maybe they can do it again.
Well, fingers crossed. Kazimierz Denia is there amongst us in spirit, at least. So we'll wait and see, Ryan. But fingers crossed, Poland do get to progress, hopefully, out of this group stage. But many thanks for taking us through Poland and their chances at this Euros. And before we'll bid you farewell, we've got to promote yourself as well, because you've got a fantastic book about Polish football. So it wouldn't do me any justice without calling that out. Where can people find your work and, more importantly, that book?
So you can find me on Twitter at Ryan_Hubbard. And my book over here is From Partition to Solidarity, the first 100 years of Polish football. You can buy that on Amazon and a couple of book websites as well.
And we'll leave a link to that below in this video as well on the podcast as well. But thank you very much, Ryan, and good luck. Hopefully, we'll be having you back on the podcast to talk about Poland progressing out of the group stages.
I look forward to it.